This is BBC World News and Hard Talk with Stephen Sackur.
In Europe, the popular backlash against austerity is gathering strength. Greek voters have rejected the bailout deal imposed from Brussels. France's new president, François Hollande, wants to rewrite the Eurozone's fiscal rules to prioritise growth. Suddenly, Germany's ability to impose its will on the Eurozone is under threat. I'm joined by three guests today. Greece's energy minister, a former economic advisor to President-elect Hollande, and from Germany, a finance spokesman for the governing CDU party. Europe seems destined for a summer of economic and political crisis. Is there any way out? Karine Berger in Paris and Michael Meister in Berlin. Welcome to Hard Talk. We will be joined in just a moment by George Papakonstantinou in Athens. But Karine Berger, let me start with you. I am imagining you're on a high after the victory of your man, François Hollande. But you tell me what you believe the message is from the French people with that Hollande victory.
The message from the French people are multiple. First, the French people has made mainly a domestic choice with some economic issues in France, especially a question around the finance system and a question around, let's say, the employment, because France, as many countries, is facing crisis. So French people want an answer to this crisis. But of course, there is also an international message. The message from France is that European construction need to tackle growth issues. The message from France is that in the situation where we are, solidarity in Europe and the questions of, let's say, the future of Europe and the issues around what is the next step for the development of European construction is on the table and is very important to tackle right now in order to go on.
So would it be fair to say that in your view, the orthodoxy, the economic orthodoxy which has prevailed in Europe for the last, let's say, 2 years and more, which has put austerity front and center, that is fiscal discipline, rigid fiscal discipline involving savage cuts in some countries to public expenditure, that has to change, does it?
In fact, Mr. Hollande wants to be very strict on the public finance. He is committed to have a public deficit of 3% next year and to have equilibrium in 2017. So he is very keen on having very strict rules around the public finance. Anyway, his message was also during the campaign that austerity without a growth policy is no use. We can see it in Greece right now. When you have only an austerity approach, then no results exist because growth is lacking, and without growth, austerity policy has no results. All right,
well, let me stop you there and switch to Berlin and to Michael Meister. Of course, you speak for your ruling party, the CDU, Mr. Meister. Austerity and austerity alone, we hear from Paris, is simply not working. You accept that?
Yeah, sure. That's the German way. We want to have a sustainable, stable euro. And therefore, we need on one hand fiscal discipline in all the states. We have agreed it 20 years ago by the Maastricht contract. And now we want to strengthen this by the fiscal compact. Second, we are open for solidarity with all the other countries in the Eurozone and in Europe. So we have already agreed on the European Financial Stability Facility and want to go a step further by the European Stability Mechanism from the 1st of July on. And third, we want to have growth, and we have done in Germany the last 50 years a lot of reforms to come to structural growth, to sustainable growth. We have liberalized our labor market. We have put young people into labor. So the number of young people unemployed are only 7%.
Well, there is
we have
no doubt.
extended.
Let me stop you there, Mr. Meister, because you've put your position very well, but there is no doubt Germany's economy is performing very well. You don't need to persuade any of us about that. The problem is that you lecture other countries which are in the most dire economic straits, which allows me to welcome to Hard Talk Energy Minister in Greece, George Papakonstantinou. Minister Konstantinou, would you accept that the recent Greek election result is a message to the elite in Greece, to the elite across Europe, saying the Greek people have had enough of the prevailing orthodoxy based upon discipline and austerity?
I think the message is complicated and needs to be read with caution. What is clear is that my own party, PASOK, which took very difficult but necessary measures, has suffered a huge defeat. The same with the Conservative Party, New Democracy, which paid its populist stance and its final shift to reason in the last months before the election. And we've had, unfortunately, a rise of the extreme left and the extreme right, including a neo-Nazi party coming into government. One lesson which must clearly be drawn is that you have to be very careful when you do this kind of fiscal consolidation. If you push too hard and too fast, we've had the biggest consolidation in any country ever in the last 2 years, but this has come with a lot of pain and a lot of sacrifices. And at some point, when people do not see the prospect and they're not convinced that what you're doing is actually leading somewhere, then you have these kind of results. So there's a more general lesson here for Europe, and I am hopeful that also with the election of Monsieur Hollande in France, we're going to see more focus on growth alongside austerity measures.
Well, we'll pick away at what the French are going to do in just a moment, but to stick with Greece for now, we have one of the key players in your political drama at the moment, Alexis Tsipras of the Syriza party, saying that the bailout agreements that Greece has struck with the EU and the IMF are now, to quote his phrase, null and void. Would you in PASOK accept that? And is your message to the Germans and others in Europe that whatever happens next, there will have to be a renegotiation of the bailout deal?
Well, Mr. Tsipras got 17% of the vote. He has no majority, and he certainly has no mandate to take Greece out of the Eurozone.
Yeah, with all due respect, he got a bigger percentage of the vote than you did, Minister, with your party.
Indeed, he got 3 percentage points more than we did. That is absolutely true. His second party, the first party, is New Democracy. He cannot lay claim to having a majority of the population backing his policies. And we all know that a unilateral repudiation of the debt or a ripping off of the deal that we have with our European partners will mean utter catastrophe for Greece. So, look, you can, of course, constantly renegotiate to improve the terms of the deal that you have. We've been doing this for the last 2 years. Every time we sat on the table and got a better deal out of it. But this is completely different from a strategy that says, let's rip it off, let's stop any kind of agreements, and let's unilaterally repudiate the debt. That will lead to the exit.
Well, let's go straight across to Berlin and ask Michael Meister, who's obviously very close to the leadership of the ruling CDU. Michael Meister, is this it as far as Germany is concerned? If Greece tries to renegotiate the deal again, will Germany's message be that at this point Greece, in essence, is saying they're no longer prepared to play by the rules and they will have to get out of the euro?
At first, we would like that everybody, especially Greece, will stay in the Eurozone. Second, we are solidary with Greece, which means we have agreed on the first package for Greece, we have agreed on the second package for Greece, and we stay to these contracts, which means as long as the Greek government exercise the agreements of the contract, we will give money to Greece and stay in line.
Yeah, but Mr. Meister, as we've just discussed, 2/3 of the Greek people in a democracy, a system you believe in, have clearly rejected the deal. So you either live with that and agree to modify it, or you say to the Greeks, the end of the road has come and you've got to get out. Which are you going to do?
That's a clear statement. We have agreed on 2 contracts. We stay to this contract. And it's a free decision of the Greek people if they would like it or not. If they say no, then we accept it. But then there will be no further payment in the help programs to Greece. And then Greece has to take the consequences of it.
Well, it's not just Greece that has to take the consequences. Karine Berger in Paris, I know that you've spent time thinking about this. If, as the financial markets now believe, it is more probable than possible that Greece leaves the Eurozone one way or another, do you believe that contagion can be contained, or are you worried about what that will mean for Portugal, for Spain, indeed for the future of the entire Eurozone?
I think it is a key point. Mr. Hollande had a very interesting sentence last week. He said, when I was young, Europe was split between East and West. I will not accept a split between North and South. And I think it is a key point of his European policy. He believes that Eurozone and European construction is a one-way story. We cannot accept that one country is not anymore in the Eurozone. We need absolutely to stick together, because if there is a possibility given to one country not to be anymore in the Eurozone with the solidarity of all the countries, then there is no reason why there would be no other country which would be in the same situation in the future.
Very clear. So here we have, in the first days of President-elect Hollande, a clear split developing between Paris and Berlin. That is a fundamental problem because it undermines the notion of European leadership.
Sorry, I can't see the split. I have clearly stated we like that Greece stay in. But on the other hand, we have a clear contract, and there will be no discussion if we change the contract. The questions to the structural reforms in Greece are the fundament of the solidarity, the fundament of the help programs, and it can't be a building staying stable over time if you change the fundament.
But if I may say so, Mr. Meister, your tone is somewhat different from that coming from Karine in Paris. She's saying on no account, in the end, can Greece be left alone, allowed to leave. You're saying, frankly, if that's the Greece decision, if that's what the Greek voters want, they can leave, and they will leave if they choose that path. It's a very different tone.
Let's remember that Greek voters, with an overwhelming
if two-thirds of the Greek people
sorry, Mr.
like
Meister, let's bring in Minister Papakonstantinou. This is the fate of your nation we're discussing.
Yes, indeed. So let's remember that with an overwhelming majority, Greek voters want to stay in the euro. Every single poll that has been done say that 75% want to stay in the euro. So now we need to figure out exactly what is necessary in order to do so. And there's a lot of misunderstanding. Unfortunately, there's a lot of populism going around. So what we need is to interpret the result of this election as one for a discussion between parties that believe in Europe, that believe that Europe means obligations as well as getting something out of it, and we move forward. But we cannot allow radical left and radical right parties to dictate the future of this country. This is simply not going to happen.
Well, you say we cannot allow it. The fact is, if I may say so, Greek politics right now is nothing less than chaotic. And one could argue that moving across the Eurozone, politics is chaotic because, for example, Mr. Hollande is committed to a renegotiation of a fiscal pact which Angela Merkel says is absolutely non-negotiable. How do you get around that, Karine Berger?
May I try to explain exactly what Mr. Hollande is proposing? He proposed to add a part to the existing treaty in order to have the goal to develop growth in Eurozone, which is in the treaty. Right now, the treaty is only focusing on fiscal consolidation. Of course, Mr. Hollande is absolutely committed to fiscal consolidation. The Maastricht that was a treaty that was signed 20 years ago is absolutely not
but with respect,
no renegotiation.
May I just interrupt for a second? Because you've said that a couple of times on this program already, that Hollande is absolutely committed to fiscal discipline and consolidation. How then do you explain that he wants to hire more than 100,000 new public sector staff, including tens of thousands of new teachers? He wants to reverse the the retirement age reform that Nicolas Sarkozy undertook to actually make the French economy more competitive and more efficient. There's a whole raft of measures in which Hollande clearly is not interested in fiscal consolidation so much as, frankly, expanding the state.
Frankly, I really cannot spend a lot of time explaining, but what I want to summarize is the fact that he is committed to decrease the share of public expenditure in GDP by 2.5 points in 5 years. What I mean is that the proposal that he made around public servants, for instance, in education, is consistent with the fact of freezing the number of public servants on the 5 years of his mandate. So clearly what is committed to is to go back to public finance equilibrium in 2017 and to go back in the Maastricht Treaty framework next year, 2013. In that framework, it is perfectly possible to hire more persons because there are a lot of public servants going on retirement this year. I will not give many technical issues, but I can tell you that the public finance consolidation is clearly his goal in the 5 next years.
Mr. Meister in Berlin, do you worry that when one looks around Europe today, one sees an awful lot of frustration and anger directed at Berlin? I can quote you a letter written recently by the former president of Latvia jointly with a former Portuguese EU commissioner saying that Germany's policies in the last couple of years have been all about self-interest, about helping your exporters, and have abandoned the European ideal. And it's a frustration and anger that we've heard from Greece, we've heard it from sectors of the French public opinion as well. Are you worried about it?
Yeah, we have to be worried about it because we need the European idea, the idea of peace, of freedom, go together. And I think the basis is the German-French friendship. That's a basis, fundamental thing for the European integration, and I think we need it. And if I hear just now Mrs. Berger, I think we are on a common way. We both agree that we want to have fiscal discipline, and second, we need growth, sustainable growth in Europe. And I think there is absolutely no difference between the French and the German position. And so I believe that the leaders of our countries will agree on that. And that is a proposal. And second point.
Explain to me.
Second point.
Before I quickly go back, I'm going to go back to Athens. Hang on. Before I go back to Athens, just explain to me as quickly as you can how you can deliver this major growth project that you have talked about while sticking to the fiscal discipline that is at the heart of German policy.
If you look to Germany the last 15 years, we have done a lot of structural reforms in our labor market, in our administration.
But with respect, Mr. Meister, not every country is like Germany, and not every country is going to deliver the internal reforms that you've seen in the last 10 years.
But the pain you mention of this Portuguese writer of your letter, you just give in phrases here. I think what he explains is at the end that that's the way how we get sustainable growth in Europe, and that's the way we have to go. And the second point is, I think we have to look to the EU budget. In the EU budget, we spend every year a lot of money, and I think we have to identify a little bit more priorities, how this money could lead to more growth in Europe. That's the second point. And a third point, we are open to strengthen the European Investment Bank and look if we could finance more projects in Europe to come to better growth. I think that's our concrete proposals to come to a better growth situation, not only in Germany, all over Europe.
They're concrete proposals, but they're not proposals, I would suggest, that are going to help Greece in the short run. So I come back to you, Minister Papakonstantinou. What on earth does Greece do now? I mean, these sorts of reforms that, or boosts that Mr. Meister's talking about in Berlin are not going to help you in the short run. You have what some people have called a zombie economy on your hands. What on earth are you going to do to deal with it?
2 points. First of all, the Eurozone is a work in progress. 2 years ago, we created the first mechanism to help a country in trouble. That was Greece. Then we broadened it, and then Ireland was helped, Portugal was helped. So we keep adding to this, and it's clear that what we've been doing has been a bit of a fire brigade approach, but we haven't quite figured it out yet. So let's be careful
the
here.
fire,
because
if I may say so, the fire is still raging in your country, and it's raging to a point where people have lost faith in the main parties and are voting for the extremes.
That's exactly my point. It is that we've traveled a long way, we've done tremendous reforms, we've clawed back half of the competitiveness we lost since we entered the Eurozone, simply in the last 2 years. A huge reduction in the deficit of 8 percentage points in the last 2 years, but we cannot lose society while we're doing it. Because if we do, we're simply helping the far right and the far left grow and capture the people's dissatisfaction. So we have to be very careful here, and we are at the point where we need to shift the focus more towards helping growth and giving people a prospect. And that's something that means that a number of countries, including Germany, need to shift their policies and need to understand better that there are limits to the extent of austerity on a country that is in a 5th year of recession, that is trying its best and is going through tremendous pain and sacrifices. Look at the results.
Yeah,
this
Minister,
is what we have now in this election.
You've got a very influential German at the other side of the screen here, so talk to him direct and tell Mr. Meister exactly what Germany needs to do now to allow Greece to escape from the terrible place it's currently in.
Well, I do not like to give lessons or to politicians of other countries. We have been having a very constructive dialogue with all the countries, including Germany, in this situation in the last 2 years. And it is clear that without Germany, we would not have been able to get this situation under control. However, it is clear that we need to rethink a number of things. We need to invent new tools. We need to think about Eurobonds. We need to think about growth policies. We need to think about project bonds for big projects in the south. We need to help the growth process more than we're doing at the moment, and be able to shield more the most vulnerable. Because if we do not do it again, the extremes are going to rise, as they've done in the last elections in Greece.
Karin Berger, you were nodding vigorously through that, even on the word Eurobonds. Eurobonds is very significant because that, in essence, is the message that the debts of the worst-hit countries in the Eurozone will be, if you like, spread across the entire Eurozone. There will be a debt transfer union, something Germany has always rejected. Are you saying, or are you suggesting with your nodding that Hollande is prepared to countenance that?
No. What Mr. Hollande has said is that we need to discuss on many subjects, and of course Eurobond, as you have described them, has to be discussed, but his main proposal for the renegotiation of the treaty is what Mr. Papakonstantinou has just said, to try to imagine what he called project bonds, that is the ability of European Union to have indebtment in order to finance specific investment projects. We are not speaking immediately of a negotiation around, as you have said, the ability to put all the debt together. It's not the issue right now. The issue is to try to imagine a solution in order to finance together specific investment projects in order to have immediate impact on the growth, especially in the south of Europe.
Final thought from you, Mr. Meister. How long is it going to take? You seem like an optimist, but how long is it going to take to make the reforms and the adjustments that will allow countries like Greece to escape from recession and actually begin to grow?
At first, all the programs are not defined by Germany or the European Union.
Many people believe that Germany is still by far the dominant member of this Eurozone.
It's not Germany, it's a European Monetary Fund, it's the European Central Bank and the European Commission. And we agreed on that, what these 3 institutes proposed to us. So it's not a German program, it's a general program of worldwide active institutions. Second point, we don't agree with any kind of transfer union, so we don't like that. And I think Greece had a much too big blown economy. If you look in the public administration, there are much too much people, which means it's necessary that it shrinks.
Michael,
and the only way to become healthy is a shrinking process.
Yeah, Michael,
and there is no other way around.
All right, well, we got that message. Michael Meister, Karin Berger and George Papakonstantinou, all of you, thanks for being on Hard Talk.